Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning, 15 minutes to change your life. The haomer Usfartem Lachem. So we're in the middle of the haomer here. We're getting into the implication of the haomer, and basically what we're talking about, what we're going to discuss today is the idea of refining the animal soul, the moichin, the intellect of the animal soul, and the emotion of the animal soul, and how that expresses itself in sefiras haomer. Yeah, and because ultimately we're discussing in order to understand why we say that you should count for yourself after Shabbos, the day after Shabbos, and not Pesach, the day after the first day of Pesach. So we're saying in order to understand that, we have to understand sefiras haomer. What the purpose of sefiras haomer? And so we started discussing this whole concept of this pasuk that it's the whole process starts from Mitzrayim, and then it brings itself out, which is coming from Hashem taking us out, and then our avodah of sefiras haomer, and then it comes Shavuos, Matan Torah, receiving the Torah. So we're discussing this process to be able to receive the Torah, and again to the king's chamber. So B'farti says Paragimel, B'farti says, and specifically, Hine Bir Nefesh Bahamas, Yesh Beish Inyanim. Refining Nefesh Bahamas is two. There's two concepts of refining Nefesh Bahamas. Bir HaMoichin or Bir HaMidas. There's the intellect and emotion of Nefesh Bahamas. V'hein Beish Inyanim the Akravas haomer with sefiras haomer, and these they correlate to the bringing of the korban haomer and the sefiras haomer. The korban haomer is the intellect, and the sefiras haomer is the emotion of Nefesh Bahamas. And he explains, "Akravas haomer hu inyan bir moichin Nefesh Bahamas." Yeah, bringing the haomer is the refining the mind of Nefesh Bahamas. He knows of chalos inyan sheminchas haomer by minaserin. Besides the fact that it comes from grain, which is machal behem, which is animal food, shemer al bir Nefesh Bahamas, which is showing on the refining of the Nefesh Bahamas. Hine. The ma'achel behema gufa, but not just it's animal food, but the animal food itself, it comes from grain. What's so special about the grain that the korban comes from? Shemer al hamoichin. Grain shows on the intellect. How? Kemuva, Memorizal has explained, as Mishmot Rabbi say in Brachos, it says in the Gemara that a child doesn't know how to say Abba until he tastes some taste of grain. Eat some food, some like bread, which is showing the intellect, which is an intellectual, so to speak, thing that he's coming to the capacity to be able to speak. But this is the intellect, but the intellect of Nefesh Bahamas. Because in our case we're talking about the bali, which is animal food. So eating, but you bring up the korban, bringing up the grain, which is showing intellect, but it's animal grain, so it's the animal soul's intellect, and that's the korban that's being brought up. Shikar midas, being the Nefesh Bahamas is mainly midas. Even the intellect of Nefesh Bahamas, we have to talk about this how it means for us, but even the intellect of Nefesh Bahamas is connected to emotions very much. Hadagan, moichin, hu, meichel behema, that even the intellect of Nefesh Bahamas is animal food. Moichin shayachin al midas, which is the intellect shayach, relatable to the midas. Yeah, and so essentially, what does it mean? Meaning, like an animal thinks and has the ability to think, but the whole purpose of that thought is really how to achieve food and survival. It doesn't think outside of itself. And so too, when a person Nefesh Bahamas, when we list on Nefesh Bahamas very much, so we'll know that Nefesh Bahamas it's not intellectual mitzad itself, just like to think ideas as much as how they connect to me, or how they make me better, or how to make me more, have a bigger ego, or just how do I eat more food that I want, or watch more movies or whatever it is. The intellect that he uses in Nefesh Bahamas is like a child. It's like a child, doesn't think about other people, thinks about themselves. And so this is what we're talking about. That even though it has intellect, we have intellect. Nefesh Bahamas does have intellect, but that intellect is very much connected with our emotions. So it's constantly like thinking about things in terms of how does that affect me? How does that make me feel? And not thinking properly. So that's only that's the korban omer. But after you bring the korban omer, which is the idea of refining this issue, the mind of Bahamas, that we shouldn't be just thinking about self-sustaining things, little things, and how to fulfill our taivas, and how do we eat more of what we want and sleep whenever we want and use people whenever we want. But we're thinking about better things, like how do I get myself to serve Hashem, and how do I use my God-given talents for good things. That takes that's one day. And afterwards comes Aveda, Bir Midas and Neshvamis, the refining the Midas, emotion and Neshvamis. Which is the whole sefiras omer, the emotions. Why? To count the days and count the weeks. That's the mitzvah. V'hainu meaning the akavas haomer hu inyan bir meichin neshachim al midas. The bringing the omer, the korban omer, is to refine the intellect. Bir hamoichin, that's connected to the emotions. So harei zeba b'yom echad b'levad. That korban was brought one day. Was the second night of Pesach. It brought up, and that was it. And it was done. It was a whole procession. They did this whole thing. They went to the field. They cut it off, and they brought it into the mikdash and did the korban. That's done, and that's finished. And as we're relating that to our intellect of the Nefesh Bahamis, so to refine the intellect of the Nefesh Bahamis, it only takes one day, so to speak. The 15th of Nisan, 16th. Tezayin, sorry. Tezayin Nisan, 16th Nisan. Whereas the sefiras omer, which is 49 days, so why is it one takes one day and one is 49 days? It's because it's not enough to have a general refining. You can't generally work on yourself. It's talking about your emotions. It's like people take a hachlata. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be kinder. I'm going to have more obviously Israel. I'm going to learn more. That's not a doable hachlata. It doesn't work. The hachlata don't work that way. That's what he's saying. When you come to really work on yourself, and they really recently just published Hachlata in English, which is a haomer on obviously Israel. One thing it says over there, to work on each emotion takes 10 years. So he says, you should be kind to people, but what do you expect? It takes 70 years to work on you to really complete yourself. And that's if you're working yourself for the 70 years. So he's saying here that in order to change and transform each midah, the way to work on ourselves on each specific issue, it takes time. It can't be general. I can't say I'm going to have more avos Yisrael, I'm going to have more chesed, I'm going to have more gvura, I'm going to be more organized. I'm going to be more organized. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. You have to take every single emotion and refine it. Not just you have to refine chesed specifically, but it has to be the pratim chesed. And this is a very, we're gonna talk about this for a second. Because I know, refine every emotion as it is included within the other one. Meaning, if you just refine yourself in this holistic way, you try to work on yourself in a general sense, it's only going to be makif. Makif would mean it doesn't permeate you, it doesn't affect you. It doesn't actually affect the actual, doesn't actually have a practical change. And the main thing is the avodah slowly. Specifically with your own koyach, with your own efforts. This is the refining of the details. Every emotion is included within the 7 other ones. And when you do that, so then in all ways you'll know God, you'll be able to have an experience with God, you'll feel connected to God, and everything you do will be a godly thing in everything. Not just when you daven and you learn, but when you go to work, and when you talk to your friends, and when you give tzedakah, when you go for exercise, you eat, all of it will be connected with God. Your thought, speech, and action should be the way it should be. And this is, we're going to pause, and as finishing up, we're going to discuss this a little bit, that essentially what he's saying, it's a very powerful message, that in order to work on ourselves, we have to be very defined about what we're going to do. Talked about this a little bit in the past, and like the way I understand it is like it comes. We had this fereng in Chassidus Tishrei time that was coming Rosh Hashanah, and my wife was going to give fereng. She's like, "What should I fereng about? Like a Chana for Rosh Hashanah should be like inspiring, or maybe slichus." So I'd realized this sort of concept, and I was like, you should tell people to take an Hachlata, the smallest Hachlata possible that can be achieved. And I was like, what are you, crazy? People are going to be like, what do you mean? Like, it's Rosh Hashanah. It's like, it's irrelevant what Hachlata we take. What's relevant is what Hachlata we keep. And if we take an Hachlata we can't keep, then what's the point? Zalman Gapin, Mashpia from Kachabad. So I heard that someone's asked him, what Hachlata should I take? So he said, take the Hachlata you took last time that you didn't keep. And I think it's an important lesson. This is what the Rebbe is saying here. That you have to go slowly. It means, you look at where you are and where you want to go. Let's say a person hasn't been davening or hasn't been learning into chitas for the last 6 months. So, or let's say a person haven't been davening for the last 6 months. So to come and say, oh, what am I doing? Should we davening? I take a Hachlata, I'm going to do davening every day. And they're going to do the whole davening. It's not going to happen. Because for 6 months, you haven't been doing it. You can't just switch. You have to take every midah. And that's also he's saying, it's not just chesed, but it's every detail in chesed. So you have to take this and say, okay, it's good. I want to daven. I want to do the whole daven. That's great. So now let's divide it into all parts, all details. What does it take? What does it mean? What does it mean to have to get up? How much time do I need to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to do this long last? Maybe we just start off small. Am I going to be motivated every day? How am I going to fix this? And how, and it's really figuring out all those details. And it's better to take a small, and this is 100% true. It's better to take a small Hachlata that could be seemingly insignificant, but if it's going to get done, it's to walk 100 miles starts with one step. And that's what we have to realize. We have to take these one steps. It could be we're still at 100 miles. It's very far, but every step takes you one step closer. And so we should realize that when we take Hachlatas, and we take not just Hachlatas like at a fereng, but anytime we want to do something, that's a resolution in the positive, like, I wish I could do this. That's great. So what's one step I can do right now to do it? And that's why he says, that's why it's not just we work on chesed for a week, we work on chesed, sheba chesed, and we work on gvura, sheba chesed, and sefiras, sheba chesed. And we're going to go, and probably tomorrow we'll start, not tomorrow, but the next shir, or the shir after, we're going to start going to all those details and understand it. To be continued.